My guest was given a second chance at life. He now lives to help others find theirs. I've never forgotten this man's prayer for me in the green room over a decade ago. What a treat. Mickey Robinson. I can't even call this a job. It's just dessert every day. How have you been for a decade?
It's been wonderful. We've traveled all over the world. We've seen God do things that we only dreamed we would even see a fraction of, and yet I believe the best is yet to come. Not to say it's without its challenges, but we live, it's not the battles that you lose, it's the ones you win.
Yes.
It's the ones you win, and we're seeing God advancing the kingdom.
You've been here since I have been away.
Yeah.
And I understand when Falling to Heaven was offered as our monthly giveaway, they just went like hotcakes.
They went right away, yes.
But there will be some today who, and I have to say, I too, not until reading your book did I understand the background before the tragedy. Who was Mickey? What was going on in your life? And you were right up front in saying that your life began in the Happy Days era.
Yeah.
We all know that TV show.
I was a kid in the 50s and a teenager in the 1960s in the post-World War baby boom. And, life at that time, our media, our culture was telling us, look good, live fast, be athletic, and so I was a combination between Superman as a hero and James Bond when I was in high school, and that's supposed to make you acceptable in our society. And when I was a kid, we had a young, handsome American president who kind of emulated the American, post-World War II society of Americans can do anything. And then
John F. Kennedy.
John F. Kennedy, and our whole world was like that. But deep down inside, even after I was good at sports, and when I was 18, I got a job in a stock brokerage firm.
You talked yourself into a job you weren't even trained
for.
for.
I weaseled my way into it, and good thing Donald Trump wasn't around. You might have said you're fired, but the fact was that I did it not because of the money, but because of the image, and I was trying to create my own image. I heard this quote one time: "A person who is a self-made man has a fool for a creator." Because we were created not by ourselves, but by the real creator. And so the person I was supposed to be, I wasn't really being. I was trying to be a person that the world wanted me to be, because maybe on the outside I looked like I was cool and I was handsome and I was an athlete and I had the right girlfriend, the right job. And then, when I was skydiving, I was really good at it and I really enjoyed it. But inside, what was the hidden motivation? What was the unknown motivation? I was unloved.
Unloved, okay.
I had lived in an abusive home. I was trying to find a life outside of the things that really are important.
Your parents had split up.
Yeah, my parents divorced 6 months before my accident, but we had a lot of strife in the home, alcohol. And I understand now, and I have nothing that I, complain about. Anything that I did wrong was my fault. Any sin that I committed, I own.
You're not blaming anybody else?
I own. No, it's reality, and it is not going to be an excuse. I don't care what your background. There may be reasons, but they're my own. Especially as you get older and you have choices, you're more accountable by God for the things that you do when you have choices. And yet I'd never met anybody that told me there was any other choices.
One of the things I found interesting, Jimi Hendrix concert.
Yeah.
You were looking at the collective effervescence of the crowd and actually jealous of them because they were so passionate about something.
Yeah.
You would soon discover that's not the passion you would ever be interested in.
No.
But it was the fact that they were so excited about something.
Yeah, there was a passion. In the 60s, there were people seeking truth. And 1968 was a critical year. Time magazine put out an issue in 1978 called The Incredible Year, and even last year, in 2008, told the whole history of 1968, how it was so, every phase from the beginning of the year to the astronaut program to the assassination of Martin Luther King, assassination of Robert Kennedy, political riots, race riots, and at the very end of the year, the first orbit around the moon. It was an incredible year of transition, and by 1969, the whole world had changed through our culture, saying free love, there's got to be another way. They threw out all kinds of values, but some dangerous things were embraced. And my accident was August 15, 1968. So my recovery was during that time of people like seeking truth, listening to music, and all that. You talked about passion, about the music and Jimi Hendrix. Within a matter of years, the prophets of our age, John, Paul, but not the ones in the Bible, George and Ringo, and others ones that were penning a different type of a life, really changed the culture of the whole world through the music. I mean, and we had a sexual revolution, we had, free love, we had drugs, expand your mind, and there was a real sense of looking for truth. But truth isn't a new system of belief. Truth isn't rejection of some old traditions. In an ultimate, in the purest sense, truth is a person. And that person is the Spirit of truth, the Holy Spirit. And Jesus himself said, you shall know the truth, and the truth will set you free. Moira, this is something I've come to understand. I used to think that every human being is born with a free will. From the time they take a breath to the time they die, they have a free will. But I've come to really understand that's not true. Because if a person is a slave to sin, they're not free.
You can be so deceived you're not free to choose.
You could want to do what's right, but you're a slave to sin and do what's wrong. And we negate that. Well, people are kind of good and all that. No, unless you have been set free by the power of God, a slave is bound to sin. Can't help it, even if they're a nice sinner, a regular good person, they're still lost.
A delightful pagan.
And I never, like people ask, well, I would be like a nominal person. I knew the name of Jesus. I grew up in a church, but I didn't live for him. I didn't have a revelation of him. He was someone who I didn't know. I knew about, but didn't know. And it wasn't until when I became a skydiver and I fulfilled a life of certain fantasies of excitement and all that, that I became, I'd say, a skydiving crackhead.
You were really addicted to skydiving.
Oh my, yes. That's all I thought about. That's all I wanted to live for. Was living for, you talk about living for the moment, I was living for the moment of being in free fall.
Now, how many seconds is that before you pull that cord?
Well, it's the higher you go, the more time you get. And so, like, for example, if you would go to 12,500 feet and leave the aircraft, you would get approximately 60 seconds of free fall before you have to open your parachute. And you should really open it at that time.
Because and I bet you pushed the envelope and let it go longer?
No, actually, I was pretty, I didn't, you don't do that because at that speed, every 5.5 seconds is 1,000 feet. So you only have 11 seconds from 2,000 feet. So if something goes wrong with the parachute, you better have enough time to correct it and all that.
How old were you?
19. And after 20 jumps, I was asked to make professional jumps, which is unheard of. You don't get that good that fast. But when you have a talent and you really want to do something, and I was good at it. And the deceiving thing was, I thought I had my life in my control. I thought I was controlling my life.
Till the engines quit and that plane was going down fast.
That's right, and there was no chance to do anything. The engine quit. We had a total engine failure and an aerodynamic stall. That's the physical property that caused the airplane to fly. And so it was nosing straight down towards the earth. We impacted a tree, going at a tremendous rate of speed, possibly like 100 miles an hour. And I was thrown forward, hit my face in the front of the instrument panel, and then we flipped over on cartwheel on the wings, and the plane smashed into the ground.
You were trapped in the plane.
And as the last skydiver was leaving, the plane exploded. And I was soaked with fuel. He heard screams and went back inside and saw me trying to escape. And I looked like a soldier in the movie Saving Private Ryan, just burning on fire from head to toe. And they pulled me out. Somehow took some time to get the fire out. Tried to go back and rescue the pilot. Unfortunately, he was burned while in the aircraft. They rushed me to the closest little hospital, cut my remaining gear off, and saw I had sustained just massive injuries.
You were given no chance of survival.
No chance. Normally, with that kind of those conditions, I would die of shock. So I lived through the first night and the next day, and then I began to go into a coma because the brain was swelling from the head injury. I was blind in my right eye. My face was torn open. I had massive burns over 50% of my body. And just a shock, even though I was in perfect health and an athlete, that kind of shock is terrible. And even though they tried all of the heroics of medicine and they tried as hard as they could, I got multiple complications that each one would have been fatal. Massive infection. They were going to amputate my arm. It was so badly infected. I was blind. I had huge weight loss, went from 170-some pounds in a perfect physique down to 90 pounds. I developed sores, open sores in my body where my bones stuck through holes in my body. And I got worse and worse and worse. I was bleeding 10 pints of blood a day. And